Hello, I'm joined by Mary Thouin. Mary, how are you? Or no, Marie, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say,
We just said we were both feeling awkward and
oh,
disconnected.
no worries.
Hi, Marie. How are you?
Hi, Samantha. Good. Nice to see you finally.
I know we've been connected for maybe 6 months virtually, unofficially,
Yeah.
and then this was our final meeting.
Yes, exactly. It's so good to be here and get a chance to have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, I'm going to start by pulling a card from the Good Tarot deck. And so this
Yay.
card could be just for me, just for you. It could be for someone listening. It might inform our conversation, but it might
Beautiful.
not. And what's so magical is that we're doing this now for people to listen to in a few months, and then also like just whenever else they listen to it.
Mhm.
So hopefully the message is timeless. I'm going to go with this one. I always pull this one. It's the Six of Water, which would be the
Oh,
Six of Cups in a regular tarot.
cool.
And I know her definition because of how much I pulled it, but I'll read it to everyone. This one stands for nostalgia, sweet memories, old flames, yearning for the security of the good old days. If I am being triggered to remember the past, I can enjoy the warm memories, but must recognize they are ephemeral. I don't know that word. Emotion can color my recall and distort my understanding of what is happening today. I acknowledge and heal old wounds. I can experience security today, enveloped in the arms of divine love. There is no need to return to the illusion of a golden era of yore because I can begin co-creating a better reality right now. Authentic healing and joyfulness will be mine if I stop rekindling the emotions of my past.
Wow. Beautiful.
Oh, I know. I feel like that resonates so much with mindful dating, especially because we tend to dwell in past relationships or experiences of the past, and we really need to be rooted in the present.
Absolutely. And this is so synchronistic because the meeting I had right before we're recording this podcast, I was talking to a colleague and we're planning a workshop together on releasing the bonds that no longer serve us.
Oh,
This is amazing.
wow. That is so
So,
cool. What are the
yeah.
odds? The odds are 100% that that
Oh
would
my
come.
gosh. Absolutely. And by the time I think people listen to this podcast, the workshop will have already happened. But yeah, it is so important to make peace with the past and create a narrative about the past that is really empowering so that we can just land in the present and be fully here and fully available for new connections and new creations.
Oh, that's beautiful. And how often do we take our past with us into future or current relationships where maybe that past story is better served in the past and not with us like we want to take it?
Mhm. Yeah. It can be challenging to leave the past behind because of course, like we have such a we're so permeable and we
Yeah.
do carry with us, not only the thoughts, but sometimes the energetic components of past relationship or traumas or imprints on our nervous system, which then, each one of those might be dealt with a little bit differently. I think some of them, are okay with being dealt with cognitive work, and then some might be better dealt with embodied somatic modalities.
Oh, I love that. I love blending those modalities together or any modalities, really. I feel like that creates a really holistic way to approach healing.
hmm
Mm,
Absolutely.
yeah.
What a
Well,
great
speaking
card.
of mindful dating, can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a mindful dating and relationship coach, which for me means I look at dating and relationships through the eye of presence and mindfulness and personal growth, instead of looking at it through the lens of how can I get to the goal faster.
Mhm.
And of course, we all have different goals, but when we're not mindful, it's so easy to take in what other people think should be our goal. There's such social pressure to be part of a traditional couple and to act a certain way in dating, to want to look desirable, to want to look hot, and to feel like we can have value in the eyes of somebody else. And the more we employ the tricks and the games of dating, then the more we can, you know, basically pump up our ego in that realm. And what I'm proposing is, okay, there's another way to do this. We don't have to make it all about like, am I valuable enough? Am I not? Is this person good enough? We don't have to let our ego be in charge. We can really let our hearts and our mindful, um, mindful mind, so to speak, be in
Mm,
charge and look at how am I growing? And what kind of experiences really fit what my heart wants right now. And whatever is being presented to me in this moment, what can I learn from it? Not just is this good or bad, but
mm,
how can I learn and become more of who I really am through that process?
Wow, that's so beautiful. And you said something about, I don't know if you use this word exactly, but am I good enough? Are they good enough? Am I worthy enough? And I definitely feel that when I got into my healthy, serious relationship, I definitely still feel sometimes that I'm not worthy enough to be in that relationship. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people have that like mindset of, am I good enough? Am I not good enough? Are they good enough? That seems like such a powerful thing that you must help people unpack.
Yes, yes. And that's why dating and relationships is such a rich terrain for growth and healing because those thoughts and those old wounds, really, kind of relating back to the tarot card, like old wounds of the past that we want to release, they will come up in those contexts because when we start having a romantic or erotic entanglement with someone, it naturally brings up all of that doubt and that anxiety about, like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to be loved? Like, it's a very vulnerable space. And when we can feed ourselves a lot of reassurance and a lot of self love and a lot of self compassion, and we can also feed that to another person, like, of course, it's a relational field, and we have
Yeah.
the opportunity to help heal one another. Like, healing will not happen just in isolation. Um, it is about helping one another, and especially when we have a beautiful container with someone who values kindness and really wants to grow with you, that can become a super powered catalyst
Mm.
for soul growth and becoming more again of who you are and who you want to be in the world.
Wow, that's beautiful. And you mentioned the space relationships are a container sometimes, well, all the time, where you're healing and growing together. And, sometimes it doesn't always go the way you may want it or doesn't always
Hmm.
feel super good. But they're always kind of that container. Can you maybe expand more on that? That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm reminded of the concept of alchemy.
Mm,
And I don't know how many of the listeners are familiar with alchemy, this kind of ancient system of wisdom and transformation that um, I'm not even exactly sure how it works. I took a class on it one time and I thought it was so inspiring, taking raw material and putting this raw material through a series of transformative processes like fire and purification and you put this thing in a cauldron, and with magic and chemistry, it becomes a very refined, very pure substance called the philosopher's stone.
mm,
And that, okay, so I don't know exactly the details of it, but there's the concept of a cauldron, a space within which you get heated and you get transformed. And some of it is uncomfortable, And some of it is really beautiful, magical, catalytic, and transformative. And that's how I see the container of dating and relationships. You put yourself in this cauldron of experience with somebody else, and the fire, is this romantic connection and all of this
Mm.
emotion that comes up and the sexual tension. Like, it's really magical, and there's no like there are some containers that will be really problematic. There's patterns that can come up that are toxic, so to speak, where there can be abuse and a lot of negative transformation. And we, want to keep an eye on how do we want to create this container and what do we need in order to feel safe enough to enter this container in a way that we can
Mm.
trust will create really positive transformation. So I don't want to glorify all relationships because some of them we shouldn't be in if
Yeah.
we want to um, really live from a place of self-love and self-respect. But whatever the case, there is such potential for transformation there in
Yeah.
that container.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Everything you said, the metaphor of alchemy and the cauldron and the fire is so beautiful. And I love that you also mentioned that not all not all cauldrons are safe to be in, not all fires are safe for us to experience.
Hmm.
And I feel like especially in the spiritual space, which since it's a kind of a spirituality podcast, I would assume people have heard this before that like even abusive relationships are somehow like part of our spiritual path or like we manifested them. And I just love when people say that reminder of like, no, not all relationships we should be in. Like it's okay to set those boundaries and take care of ourselves and have that self-respect, like you said. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really complex topic. Actually, I didn't even predict that we were going to go there so quickly in our conversation. Because I also want to acknowledge that when sometimes we do find ourselves in not so healthy situations and cauldrons, like there can be so many factors at play. There's layers of experience that we can't always describe, like why we feel the need to be in a particular cauldron. And sometimes we need to just like wait until we feel ready to say no and put up that boundary. So I just want to, say a shout out to people who might be in this situation where they feel like they
Mm,
can't get out of it for now, and it happens. It happens, and it's okay to, you know, to find yourself in that situation and to trust that you will be able to get out of it and that you will be able to learn from it, even if it's a very difficult, very painful lesson about what not to repeat.
mm. Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. Um, I didn't expect to go there either, but I'm so glad that you said that. There's so much shame about maybe that we manifested or like put ourselves in situations that were unhealthy, and then there's shame about not being able to leave them right away or shame that we didn't leave them quicker. So
Hmm.
I love that you're really addressing all of that with such love and compassion.
Yeah, of course. I know it's a fine line, also being a coach.
Mm,
Sometimes I do witness people going down roads that I would not characterize as the most healthy,
mm,
but I can't tell them like, no, you need to go away. Like I'm not there to tell people what to do and to choose their path for them.
yeah. That's
But,
beautiful.
we have to trust that the more awareness you bring to wherever you are on that path, then the better choices you're going to make. And that can be a slow process,
Yeah.
but, you know, there's there's no secret formula. There's no pill that you can take and only be in perfect relationships. Like there's no such thing,
Mm,
but we have to be really patient with ourselves.
yeah. Oh, I love that. I have to be really patient with ourselves. And I think that's one of the beauties of mindfulness is that, like you said earlier, there is no good, there is no bad, there is no timeline that we have to be on, right? We can be really patient with ourselves and really compassionate. because we don't get a guidebook. We get awesome coaches sometimes like you and maybe books, but we don't have a guidebook for how to be a human until we're here. So I love that.
That's so true.
Mm. Um, you mentioned self-love, and when we're recording this, not when it comes out, but it was just Valentine's Day, so I feel like self-love is really on my mind.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like it's so true that to be in a relationship with others, we really have to fill up our own, that like metaphor of filling up our own cup first, feeling that we meet our own needs in the ways we can, that we love ourselves and that we are compassionate with ourselves before we can do that with another. Not before, but because I think, well, now I'm going on another tangent. We
It's a
can
good
learn
tangent.
to
That's an
do that.
important one. Yeah.
We can learn to do that with people, but it's so important that we learn to do that for ourselves. Is that something that you typically coach people in? Is self-love?
Yes, that is one of the constants. Like pretty much in all of my coaching relationships, we go there right away. It's so fundamental to have self-love and self-care. To me, self-care is an active form of self-love, and it's a way that we remind ourselves on a consistent basis that we are worthy and that we can create a wonderful life and a wonderful energy field for ourselves. And it helps so much with everything. I mean, it helps with just feeling better as we go out and meet people and enter relationships. And then, be the best version of ourselves so everything
Yeah.
gets better. But also, it helps with discernment
Mm.
because when we are creating a really strong system of self care and self love, then we are less prey to having people enter our field who don't match that loving vibration. We kind of naturally repel people who are not going to honor us. So that is probably the number one reason why I think it's so vital. It's so fundamental to have your own back when you are contemplating entering really entangled relationships, such as sexual and romantic relationships. If you know that you have your own back and you are fundamentally like on your own team, then you have more to give, and you also know how to discern who is a really great person to have in your inner circle.
I love that. I love that you tied self-love in with discernment. I
Mhm.
think that's so beautiful. And I can definitely see a pattern in my own life of when my self-love was very low. I let anyone and everyone in that wanted to be there, even if they didn't really want to be there. Like,
Oh,
and
wow.
now that I have like more reserves of self-love, I'm definitely more particular, not even in like sexual or romantic relationships, but with any relationship. So
Mhm.
it's so important for that feeling of self-trust too, that we can trust ourselves when people aren't good matches for us, when people don't treat us well, or when they're just not in alignment with us.
Mhm. Have you ever read Miguel Ruiz's books? I think The Four Agreements and Mastery of Love.
No, but I've always wanted to and just never got around to it.
So I love these two books. I mean, he's written more, but in one of the two, I believe it's in The Mastery of Love, there is a story that totally encapsulates what we just talked about. And can I tell you
Wow.
to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it's called The Magical Kitchen. And it's the idea that if you imagine you have a magical kitchen in your home and it can produce any kind of food in any amount that you like anytime. And you
Great.
always have a big table full of friends. They come and they eat and you share good food. It's just this abundance, right?
Mhm.
And someone knocks at the door and you go to the door and then here they are with a pizza box. And they tell you, "Hey, look, I have pizza." I'm willing to give you a piece, but if you want a piece of my pizza, you're going to have to do whatever I want. You're going to have to be my slave. you're gonna look at them and say like, well, I don't really need pizza. I mean, I can make you a whole pizza in my magical kitchen. Like, you're welcome to come in and eat, but I'm not gonna be your slave. I'm not gonna do whatever you want in exchange for a piece of pizza because I'm not that desperate. And on the other hand, like if you imagine being starved and never
Mm.
having enough food, if someone shows up with a pizza at your door, you might actually compromise on your own standards and be really submissive, not in a fun way, but in a um, just like a really like self-harming way in a relationship because you're so desperate and you haven't found that inner source of abundance.
Source of abundance.
Yeah. So I think that the best thing we can do, whether we're single or in a relationship or dating or any kind of relationship status, is to cultivate that inner source of love so that
Yeah.
you always have enough for yourself and you always have enough to give.
Mm.
And then
Oh,
you're not, prey, you're not a victim to other people's demands and expectations.
oh, that's beautiful. What a great story.
Hmm.
And I love that metaphor of this bountiful kitchen. And I also love that metaphor because I'm hungry right
I
now.
know, pizza sounds good.
It was like, you're telling me there's a magical kitchen and a hot stranger with pizza? I gotta read this book.
Oh my gosh, yes. Just don't do, anything too crazy in exchange for the pizza.
What a beautiful story, though. Wow, thank you
Mhm.
for sharing. And I'll link those two books in the show note, or I'll put
Awesome.
the title. 'Cause I hate when
Yeah.
people mention books and then I'm like, what was that? So
Yes,
those will be in the
yes.
show notes.
Mhm.
Um, that's beautiful. I want to talk about mindful dating a little bit more and maybe how you got started on this path, because I think this is such an interesting path you've chosen.
Mhm. Right. I mean, it's really the intersection of my two passions, which are spirituality and
Mm,
mindfulness, and then intentional dating and relationships on the other hand. So I came from a family that was not conventional. My parents, they never wanted to be married, they never wanted to live together under the same roof, but they intentionally wanted to be co-parents and have a child.
wow.
So they went for it, even though their families and their social environments were telling them they were crazy, that they should marry and live under the same roof in order to have a child in a normal family structure.
Yeah.
And they followed their gut. They followed what they had in their heart to do, and they said no to what they didn't want. And they had me, and I would go from one, week to my mom's and one week to my dad's and
Mm,
alternate. And I had two homes, and it was very
wow.
harmonious. They didn't fight, they didn't, bicker, and it was
Yeah.
just my family structure.
Mm,
So I think I was raised with the strong value system of intentionality
mm,
and not just taking other people's, definitions of what should be a good family structure, what should be a good romantic relationship, what are the steps that you should take if you're going to show commitment and show your own value, et cetera, et cetera. And instead, really ask yourself what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and to design your life accordingly.
yeah.
And really, to me, that's also the definition of spirituality and mindfulness. It is to disentangle what are the external sources of authority in our lives from what are the internal sources of authority and autonomy, and be able to more and more listen to our insides, to our heart, and to not let all of these shaming messages and those expectations from the outside and those conditioned pressures um,
Yeah.
determine our destiny. So that's mindful dating for me. It's like, okay, how do you apply those principles of internal autonomy and authority to you navigating the dating realm?
That's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that story of your upbringing. I think that really sounds so beautiful. Was that, you don't have to get into it too much, of course, but um, yeah, was that interesting? Like watching other kids have something different while you had something that looked unlike them, perhaps?
I think it was mostly interesting for them. I was the exotic one. They were like, "What? Your parents are not together?" Oh, I remember in elementary school, one kid told me like, "I understand you. My parents are divorced too." And I told him like, "No, I mean my parents are not divorced. They just never wanted to be married. Like it's different. Like I didn't go through a whole trauma of separation. I mean, it was very unique and for me that was my normal. So I think it took a few more years, maybe around high school and college, to realize the weight of people's molds and expectations. When I started dating, I started getting into relationships, and then, people, of course, projected those stories on me about
Yeah.
what a relationship should look like. I remember the first time I realized that monogamy was an expectation. I was in
Mm,
college and I was seeing a lot of people, like a lot of us do in college. But one time I was hanging out with one of my colleagues. I was studying music and we were like playing music together. And I felt like there was an attraction developing. And I suggested that we kiss or make out or something like that. And he told me, "Oh, I can't because I have a girlfriend." And I remember
mm,
thinking, like, that's cool, you have a girlfriend, but what does that really have to do with this that we're experiencing?
yeah.
What does that have to do with us?
Yeah.
And just feeling a bit confused or just realizing how, for so many people, like, those things are just assumed. Monogamy is assumed. There's no discussion about it. It's just like, okay, we're together now. That means we're excluding other people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or not valid, but
Mm,
can we make things more intentional? Like, what is it that we actually really want? And
yeah.
design our relationships based on that rather than assumptions.
I love that. What an interesting story too, that I feel like I'm someone who grew up with parents who were married and then very much not married. Very much they're very tension. A lot of
Hmm.
tension. Um, that's really interesting. And having those like gender norms, those relationship norms very ingrained. So
Hmm.
how interesting that you came at it from a different point of view where you kind of learned those rules later. That must have felt, it feels confusing from my end too, to have to unlearn that. But it must have been very confusing to have to learn that at an older age too. That's really interesting.
Right, right. To learn about them and still, doing my best to navigate my own life with a sense of freedom and agency.
Mm, yeah, I
And,
love
in a world where most people have those shared assumptions.
that.
So it is, in a way, frustrating when you feel like you're trying to create something new and novel and fresh, and a lot of people come crashing down with, no, this is the box you should be in.
Yeah, yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean,
And
it's
people are,
so, yeah. Oh, no, no, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say people are so threatened by people living outside of the box too, for whatever reason.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm,
I mean, I think it's the case with all sexual minorities or now like gender minorities, people who defy the binary norms of genders and gender roles.
mm,
It's very difficult to operate in a system that keeps reinforcing them through every mean possible, through the media, through, you know, every sort of social function that you go to. Like if you start paying attention to the different
mm,
ways that we reinforce those norms, it
yeah,
makes it very obvious why living outside of those norms can be challenging.
yeah, absolutely. And you said something earlier about the story, something about that being a story that we tell ourselves or that other people tell us. And I think that's such a a transformational way to look at anything, really. I know I asked a client the other day, "What's the story you've been telling yourself about anger?" And she had like a huge story. And I said, "What if that story just didn't exist?" And she was like, "Oh, oh shit." And so, what if the story you taught yourself about relationships or about your worthiness didn't exist? What would happen then? And I think that's such a key of mindfulness is that we are really just telling ourselves these stories and we can tell ourselves new stories too.
Hmm. Right,
Mm.
right. That's freedom.
Oh, I love that.
Choosing our stories, choosing the lenses through which we
Mm.
look at the world.
Choosing our stories. I love that. And you mentioned that something you do with a lot of clients to create this intentional dating or intentional relationships is to kind of follow their inner knowing or their inner compass or their gut. How do you typically tap into that source with people when you're working with them?
Ooh, that is a very good question. A lot of it is emergent through the relationship
Mm.
because if I create a safe space for all of them to feel welcomed, then those things that might not feel welcomed in other parts of their life can naturally come up. So I think that's the miracle of a coaching container or a therapy container or, a healing container when a practitioner creates a space for non-judgment. It naturally invites all of these hidden parts or, those more raw and tender and authentic parts to come out because they can feel safe. So, so much of it is energetic and relational. It's about finding a practitioner that you feel super comfortable with. And then, of course, there's all kinds of questions, like powerful questions, like the one you ask your client, like, what is the story you have about dot, dot, dot? And what might you feel if you did not have that story? These are very well crafted questions that we can ask our clients that really help them think about things in a different way, in a way that's novel and not just rehearsed. Because,
Mm.
like most people have never really asked themselves, like, what's the story I have about anger? It's like, whoa, wait, I'm angry. I didn't realize I had a story around it. But once
Yeah.
help people position themselves in that almost like backstage or, behind the curtain of their emotions, through those powerful questions, that's when more awareness can really be born.
Oh, I love that. And what an intentional space you're creating and holding too.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it's the miracle of of healing modalities. They're all different. Like I love how many people have different modalities. Even different kind of coaches and different somatic therapists and even massage and body work can invoke so much um, stuff that is just like lodged in the muscles. Like I love the combination of cognitive work and also like physical, somatic, body-based work.
Oh, I love that. And I'm switching gears a little bit here. But I was wondering if you could chat about mindful online dating. I know we
Hmm.
chatted about that on the phone. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I coined that expression, mindful swiping. Um,
Yes.
it sounds so counterintuitive because most people don't associate swiping with mindfulness. Like that's something that most of us do kind of mindlessly. We sit
Mm.
on the toilet and we're like, oh, swipe left, swipe right, blah. Like, is he
Yeah.
hot? Is he not? Um,
Yeah, definitely.
but that reinforces a lot of our conditioning around, like, yeah, hot or not, who has value, who doesn't, am I valuable, how many likes, how many matches do I get? And it can really mess with our mind. And I don't want to blame the apps themselves for
Mm.
that. I think we can learn how to use them better. And some of the suggestions I have around that are first to create a sacred space around your use of online dating. So instead of, being at the grocery store in line and just like swiping anytime when you're distracted,
The
maybe
bathroom.
try, yeah, exactly. Sit in a cushion, like light a candle, put some nice music and do a little breathing and then center yourself in a different space. Like maybe get into your body and then look at those people's pictures before swiping and ask yourself, how does my heart feel with them? Or, in the words of one of my favorite dating coaches out there, Ken Page, does my soul feel safe with this person?
Oh,
And I think that's a great question to ask. And we can ask our gut, and we can ask our heart, and we can ask the deeper layers of us, the intuition part of us for an answer there. And it's so much deeper than just like, well, does this person seem attractive or successful? It's really like,
yeah.
well, what kind of emotions are these people running through their bodies? What do I
Mm,
perceive, from just like their facial features and their expressions and what they're showing us through an online dating profile? What
yeah.
what do I really perceive,
Mm,
in the next layers? And is this someone I would like to connect with? And if not, can I send them love? Can I, extend loving kindness in, the words of Buddhism? It's kind of a meditation that Buddhists also um, like to do, like the loving kindness meditation. It's like sending love and kindness to everyone
mm,
indiscriminately, and to know that we're all in this boat together. Even when someone triggers a negative reaction, even when we look at someone's face and we're like, oh, I know this is the kind of person who is an
mm,
asshole, and I know this is the kind of person who's not gonna like me, or, we sometimes get angry at people while swiping. We're just like, oh, why don't they take a better
mm.
picture? Like that's ridiculous. Like what a terrible profile. They don't care. Like we have
Yeah.
all of this negative self-talk when
Mm,
we swipe, and what if we interrupted that for a minute and instead like asked ourselves like, okay, can I find it in me to send love to this person if I'm swiping left or if I'm swiping right, and send love to myself?
mm. Wow. I love everything about what you just said, starting with having that sacred ritual almost around online dating. It's really becoming clear to me that anything can be a ritual.
Hmm.
And that as long if we create that safe space, whether it's external with candles and music or just checking in with ourselves and setting intentions, everything is magical when we do that. And I love that idea of really setting your intentions. Why am I opening this app? Because I feel like
Hmm.
sometimes when I was on apps, I would do it out of boredom.
Hmm.
Like I would just go like, no, 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 no. And then I would run out of people. Then I'd be like, wait, maybe I want to see those people again. I love everything you just said. That's so beautiful. And then not just swiping no because they're ugly or because, they look creepy,
Hmm.
but because you just don't feel their energy sitting right with you, but you wish them love and you send yourself love at the same time. What a
Hmm.
magical practice.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Such a great um, gymnasium for your intuition. I find
Love
it
that.
such a great
Yeah.
practice. I think I learned so much through online dating, how to perceive and know better and quicker who I'm dealing with in the real world. Because okay, it's not a big deal if you do end up meeting someone who's not a good match, but then you can learn from it. Like, could I have predicted that maybe a little bit earlier in the game, before getting involved, before getting entangled? And online
Mm,
dating is this really quick feedback loop between, okay, getting a first impression, observing your thoughts. Like, oftentimes we will find someone so handsome and we're just like, oh, yeah, of course, I'm going to swipe right. They're so attractive. And yet, we might want to go slower and say like, oh, maybe they don't seem like the nicest person, or there's red flags, or there's something that doesn't fit, sit right with me, and to really give ourselves permission to, again, like not be desperate, like like the pizza situation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that what you said about it being a gymnasium for our intuition. And it really could. Why are we angry that this person looks a certain way? Is it our intuition or is it actually telling us something about a wound or a belief that we have about something?
Hmm.
This is so interesting. And do you have tips for mindfully engaging after you swiped, like when you're doing the messaging back and forth before you meet up?
Hmm. Yes, yes. I mean, every message, every interaction then is a new opportunity to check in with ourselves and say like, okay, like what do I feel like writing? Do I feel like writing? Do I feel like what they wrote? How does this land with me? And to get away from playing games. Like there's so many advice columns that will tell you like, oh, you have to wait a certain amount of time before responding, et cetera, et cetera. I think it it will tell you something if you're always on your phone, always responding like super nervously, super like right away, right away, right
Mhm.
away. That might be a good indication that you don't have enough other stuff in your life going on. So, but I wouldn't like force yourself like, oh, I have to wait a half hour. Like I would really just follow your gut and look at, yeah, what a person is writing. What is the subscript? What are you writing and why? How can you come from your heart? How can you come from your authenticity? And then let people, either come closer or fall off.
Mm, that's so true. Wow, thank you for that. And that's definitely a practice I can see using not just for dating, since I'm not dating right now. I could see myself applying that in every interaction. I know my therapist one time told me that she uses integrity in everything she says. So she won't, like, if she's heard something bad about someone and then she meets them, she won't say it's nice to meet you because it's not. Or I've
Mm.
heard good things about you because she hasn't. But she'll say, they say nice to meet you, she'll say, "Oh, thank you." Like,
Mhm.
and just when she told me that, it blew my mind because we really can be intentional with everything we say, not just the stuff that we pick and choose about. We can really
Mhm.
be intentional in all areas and all ways.
Oh my gosh, yes. Actually, Miguel Ruiz, who wrote The Mastery of Love and the
Mm,
Four Agreements, one of the four agreements is to be impeccable with your word.
mm,
And that is so beautiful. Yes, how can you choose every word in a way that feels truly aligned with who you are and how you're feeling and aligned with kindness? That doesn't mean you say something that's not true to try to manipulate someone into liking you or
mm,
into,
yeah.
thinking that you're kind, but what is kindness going to say? What is truth going to say in the way that feels really authentic and real? That is a meditation of every moment because we're always communicating.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you so much. You sometimes I have people on this podcast who are so soothing and so comforting, and you are one of those people, but it's always
Aw.
very challenging to run an interview because I just like feel so held and they're like, "Oh yeah, wait, what's next?"
Oh, this
Uh,
is cool though. I feel like we have a very good flow. It's like really easy
yeah.
to talk and to move from one thing to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're really cool.
Oh, likewise. Takes one to know one.
All right. I can't believe it's almost been an hour. Um,
Crazy.
I ask all my guests to send our listeners home with a challenge or a resource, something to do over the next week or something to check out. So, yeah, what is your assignment for us this week?
Okay, so I have a couple of different resources, actually, and we just added Miguel Ruiz's books, which I think are great.
Mhm.
Another book that I always recommend is from Ken Page, who is the dating coach I mentioned earlier, and he wrote a book called Deeper Dating. I think it's one of the best books written about mindful dating out there. So if someone wants something to read, or there's also a podcast called
Mm,
Deeper Dating that I recommend. And in terms of a practice, though, I wanted to suggest something that I've given one of my clients this week,
mm,
and it's called the 5 minute pleasure practice. And I designed it with my client because she was having a hard time really connecting with her own intuition and saying no to all of the external sources of authority. And we want to reinforce our own internal source of authority. And I think that is so valid for each one of us. I think this is a kind of a universal need. And the 5 minute pleasure practice is to take 5 minutes every day and just ask your body what would feel good right now and do that. And maybe sometimes it's like dancing and moving a certain way and stretching certain muscles that feel like they need to be stretched. Maybe you hang out with a beautiful plant that you have in your home, or you go outside and you find a tree and just being in the sun or being in the snow or connecting with the natural world might be what your body wants to do. Or maybe it's just sitting in silence and feeling your breath. And so it could be anything, it could be self touch. And to ask yourself that and give yourself at least a 5 minute window every single day to cultivate this, like, I'm worthy, I care about me, I know what I need. It builds such an important muscle.
mm. Oh, thank you. I love that, and I can't wait to do that later. Can't wait to
Yay.
try it out. Thank
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
And lastly, please tell us about how we can work with you, maybe how we can follow you, your website, anything like that.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. So you can follow me on Instagram. It's at love underscore insight underscore dating. And my website is where you can sign up for my mailing list and also sign up for an introductory session that's completely free. It's a 30-minute exploratory coaching session that I give anyone who's interested in talking more about their love and relationship path and seeing if there is a potential to work together. So I encourage all the listeners to come and meet me. It's no pressure, no big sales pitch. It's really to see if we're a good fit. And my website is loveinsight-dating.com.
Nice. Wonderful. And just a little side note, I love that you said that because I've definitely hopped on those free calls and then it wasn't really a free call.
Yes,
It was like
yes.
really pushy. So I love that. I love when people say a no pressure call. That feels so good. Feels so
Right.
aligned with who you are too. You're very flowy, very low pressure. I like that about you.
Hmm. Right. And I don't think there's such a thing as wasted time. Like for some
Mm,
people, if they jump on a call and they don't make a sale, it's like, oh, that was not worth it. But
yeah.
to me, it's like every person has something to teach me. Every person, has something to learn from our interaction. And sometimes we might refer each other to somebody else or a resource or some gift that keeps on giving. And I love talking to people. That's why I'm a coach, and I genuinely do. So
Yeah.
I don't believe in wasted time.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It was such an honor to talk to you, and I can't wait for other people to have the honor of listening to you talk to me. What a weird way to phrase that.
Oh, thank you so much. It was lovely, and you are such a wonderful conversation partner. I feel like we could have keep on going for another 2 hours easy.
No, another time we will for 2 hours.
Okay, great.